Don't mess with me, kid. I can't stand the sight of you. Yeah! Ow!
So I've been playing Galerians. Ladies, gentlemen, people of various other descriptions, exactly 1 week ago, I myself, ThorHighheels PhD, went on a journey to find the most edgiest game ever created. I searched the farthest and dankest corners of the internet, initially leading me to redundant little tales of woe like hatred or the admittedly quite hilarious Postal 2. But to me, that isn't what edgy means. That's grimdark. No, I wanted the most teenageiest angst ever created. I wanted the boys wearing the cutie girl choker. I wanted the late 90s and early 2000s personified. The sheer essence of motherfuckers that had the audacity to wear those really stupid checkerboard pattern belts. The Jack Skellington shirts, the suicide jokes, the "leave me alone, mom!" all distilled into a single game. And that game is Galerians. Starring the edgiest, whiniest, and late 90s teen in existence, Galerians tells the tale of Rion, who, of course, suffers from amnesia, has a damsel living in his head, and also has the ability to use telekinesis due to his drug addiction. I shit you not, boys and girls, but I think this is, without a doubt, the most edgiest game that has ever edged. This thing can hold off coming for days. But yeah, Rion finds himself waking up in an evil research facility upon hearing a cry for help echo through his head. So after doing a wee bit of crying and whinging, he then comes to the rescue. Though, with this being a survival horror style game, he sure as fuck takes his fucking time. As it is though, the story isn't actually bad. I mean, it's a lot like a cheesy 90s anime, but I'm not sure I'd really consider that as a negative per se. The writers and the art people were definitely onto something here, with the way they combined elements of ghetto boy drug abuse with anime whimsy and mystery. And the dystopian cyberpunky setting that creates is really quite neat. It has a bit of a subnautic motif that mixes fairly well with the resi mansions and the generic Blade Runner shit. There's just something about a hotel with submarine doors, small round boat windows, and metal flooring that just looks pretty funky to me. What does seem a bit odd is how it didn't really feel like much of a horror game, nor did it ever seem like it was ever trying to be one. There's this one bathroom with kinda spooky music, and it also scared the ever-living shit out of me this one time. But for the most part, the game is relatively quiet. Which, when coupled with the drug-fueled, amnesia-driven story, makes it feel like more of a paranormal mystery adventure game. A bit like something Sing would have shat out on the DS, which is totes cool in my book. It is just the right amounts of eerie and mystery to be an eerie mystery. It is a bit of a shame, however, that the voice acting is rather bad. Not even like funny bad, just bad. And the animation quality is literally Tekken Tier 1 awkward as well. I'd usually be down with this, but here it really seemed to obstruct the story's somehow almost but still not really goodness more than it complements it. I mean, believe it or not, but this was deemed okay enough, by the developers anyway, to warrant all kinds of spin-offs. It has a PS2 sequel, 2 entire novella, and a short OVA, and I can honestly see why. Galerians has a potentially interesting story with themes you don't often see in conjunction, set in a world that's both unique yet a tad understated due to it being held back by the shackles of its era. So I suppose because of that it's worth giving another shot. But realistically speaking, probably not.
You're new around here, huh? You're so young. Yet you're hooked, ain't you?
In the few corners of the deep web in between all of the kiddie porn and would-be hitmen, where people still actually talk about this game, it is commonly referred to as a traditional survival horror title. And to this I say, no! It uses a similar framework, sure, but much like Onimusha, Drag, and Deep Freeze, it's more like an experimental action game that plays the way that it does because Japan simply hadn't figured out how to do third-person combat quite yet. So it does use tank controls, but then those of the slow and shitty variety that often lead you getting stuck on level geometry, and it also has some fairly straightforward puzzles, usually involving pixel hunting for keys or a type of equivalent, but that's just about where all the similarities stop. As, unlike a survival horror game, you're not expected to avoid combat, and as such, the combat systems are sort of almost cool, though not really, but at least they tried. Basically, all of it's centered around drugs. Each drug being a different type of attack. There's the basic one called Nalcon, which knocks people back, the shittily named Red, which sets motherfuckers ablaze, and there's also a few other ones you can find along the way. All of these, as indicated by the third bar on screen, are finite, but of course totally replenishable by finding vials of the stuff out in the open, as drugs often tend to be, obviously. Anyway, you can use set attacks by holding down R1 to charge up and then press X to release. Sometimes even being able to spam X while charging to get in multiple hits. It's a really odd fucking system to say the least, but when taking into account how ridiculously slow everything moves, it kinda starts to work. But more on that later. The bar above your drugs bar is easily the most interesting one. It's labeled AP, which stands for... Essentially, it's almost a type of stamina that keeps running out, or in this case filling up, as you run along doing your thing. And once it fills up, Rion will go Full Elfenlied, at which point you lose the ability to sprint and everyone around you starts exploding into a bloody mess, but you also lose HP gradually. So, you can pop a pill called Delmator, which then reduces your AP back to 0. That bar being full though doesn't quite mean that you'll mong out instantly, as it'll only activate the next moment you do anything telekinesis related. This creates an element similar to a type of limit break one might see in an RPG, where you'll be able to hold on to it for a boss fight or for a room with a ton of dudes, but as a trade-off, it'll also greatly limit your abilities while you do. It is cool, and I like it. The only problem is that the game does a pretty piss poor job of explaining all of this. There's a note near the beginning listing all of the drugs, sure, but it's mostly filled with lore-related mumbo-jumbo, greatly clogging up an otherwise straight-to-the-point tutorial, and it also completely disregards context. Fuck if I knew what the hell a Nelcon was supposed to be, or why the game starts you off in a room with nothing but locked doors and little to no music. If you're anything like me, chances are you'll start fiddling around with buttons to find out what do, only to then take a bunch of pills you desperately needed to hold on to, waste all of your attack juice, and fill up the AP bar within minutes to then die feeling rather confused and miserable. I'd say that it's pretty fucking likely you might require a good starting over after having done nothing but fuck up for the first hour or so. I mean, with AP, limited resources, a billion different drugs, and an odd control scheme, there is a lot to take into account here. And it can definitely take a fair whack of getting used to. Luckily, you don't have to deal with any stupendously tiny inventory caps bogging it down, and the puzzles are
tradizionale,
being that you mostly just look around for keys, so that at least makes the rest of the game a bit more doable. In fact, I'd honestly say that it's actually a tad easy. Health items and AP pills are literally fucking everywhere, backtracking to a save point is never an issue, and not once did I find myself without any resources. Hell, the game even has a built-in hint system, which you use by pressing triangle that can do anything from straight up giving away item locations to even disposing some lore. Though there are some instances where you're required to do this, which could lead to you walking around aimlessly looking for an item that hasn't even appeared yet. And the AP bar also looms over your head as a type of constant threat while backtracking and exploring. Though it's nothing too intrusive, let alone annoying. Overall, once you get used to its moderately unorthodox controls and systems, it's actually pretty fucking fun. Sure, you can debate if it legitimately holds up all you want when compared to things that clearly have a lot more thought and polish put into them, like Resident Evil 2 or the first Silent Hill. But 1, this was made on a shoestring budget, and 2, I quite enjoyed myself while playing, so I don't know, piss off. I mean, the actual combat itself is pretty fucking satisfying to use, being that you can burn people alive, throw them about, or make their heads explode, and the way the game is laid out by using small levels with simple puzzles, and plenty of items to ensure that you can keep setting shit on fire, works well enough to bind all of it together. So, it would be quite the shame if they throw in some boss fights that would ruin everything. Well, okay, maybe not everything, but with the way the combat works, it seems to be designed for one quick dodge, followed by a well-timed one-hit kill. The enemies here rarely come in groups, and when they do, it usually serves as a type of trap or a mini-boss or something that's clearly meant to be avoided. So, when you start adding complicated enemies into the mix with elaborate attack patterns and hard-hitting moves without changing the core design of your systems, essentially thinking that these abhorrently stiff tank controls and the slow as fuck charging are more versatile than they are, you would be sorely mistaken. And with the exception of the first boss, who I'm killed in one hit by going full elfen lead on him, all of the boss fights were fucking horrible. You see, Rion is kind of a pussy as he tends to fall down upon impact. With the regular enemies, this is fine, because their AI is often too stupid to really do anything with that opportunity anyway, save for one instance where I got stun locked. But with the bosses though, every instance could potentially turn into that one instance, as the only thing that constitutes a boss in this game is having the ability to spam the same few moves, have very large invisibility windows, and of course, practicing the age-old art of ganking. To be fair, I wouldn't say that any of them are necessarily hard per se. I only died about 5 or 6 times over the entire course of the game, but these fights just aren't any fun. They can easily take well over 15 minutes, mostly feature you running around unsure of what's going on, and in general don't do much to complement the game's otherwise neat little battle system. Imagine, if you will, a bullet hell game with Resident Evil 1's tank controls in slow motion with incredibly wonky hitboxes. Not great, innit? But besides that, I wouldn't say that the game is at all bad. I'm actually surprised by how much I ended up enjoying it. It's just a tad too ambitious for what it's worth, but if you enjoy traditional survival horror games, then this deviation might just be worth picking up.
Rion, you little bitch, I am your conscience.
Who are you? And why do I hear your voice in my mind?
Shut up! Lay off the drugs, you fucking slut.